I would like to request all the attendees of the panel discussion starting from 2:30 p.m. Please take your seats.
It's been a complete, like, what should I say? Like, I mean, I think basically because of the change in location, the last moment, and traffic jam and everything stuck, the people still coming. Couple of faculty, couple of panelists also yet to come. And but I thought we'll start rather than waiting for them. And in fact, the audience also, like, they are on the way. They're supposed to come, right? So. Gabriela was there. It's a sequel to the AI Safety Summit Conclave, what we did in December at Kerala. It was an international event. Thankfully, we had Dr. Gabriela Ramos giving a keynote address along with others. And we also came with a safety report, which we shared, which was well received by industry and academia as well, and public sectors. So we thought we will have a sequel to that, and we'll discuss some of the points which have been discussed and take it forward from there, and so that we can shape up this AI safety, in particular agentic AI safety discussions forward, so that it can form input to the policymakers, the academia, and the industry in general. The important aspect we must consider here, the AI safety aspect report, we covered the sectoral aspects of AI safety when it comes to agentic AI. We covered BFSI, we have covered defense, we have covered healthcare, we have covered retail, and we have covered education. And I'm happy to share this report with you and all of you, and after this. And it's also published on the LinkedIn, right? And we are also going to come out in another 2 days. We are going to release our AI sovereignty for India and Global South. It's been, we have gone through a very extensive interview process and survey questionnaire process, and we are coming out with a report. So that with that background, I would start with Dr. Krishna Sri, because she's going to give 5 minutes highlights of the safety report, what we published with, and we can take it forward. Is that okay? Yes, sure.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much for being here. We've seen in these past couple of days a very broad spectrum of various different dimensions that AI can take course in science and technology, in the social sciences, humanities, aspects, and we've had many experts from all around the world with us these past couple of days. And I think we are seeing more and more how every aspect of AI is going to really touch our lives, our businesses, our economic growth, and probably also our peace of mind, I would say, at some point of time. But just addressing what Dr. Shivaramakrishnan just mentioned, we actually are from south of India, Amrita University, built on a 3-core pillar, which is looking at compassion-driven research, education for life, and global impact. Now, 2 of these 3 pillars actually intersect the discussion today. One is compassion-driven research. What does it really mean when we really look at these emerging technology frontiers in terms of how it touches the lives and links in terms of the applications, in terms of also the frontiers, in terms of safety and security as well. The second is really global impact. So as we are seeing, AI is just not the first, but definitely the current technology that has and has largely impacted in probably the fastest wave so far. Not only the technology companies, but also organizations, even civil society organizations for that respect, in terms of how we really deal with day-to-day activities and communicate. With that, the work that we did in December actually touched on 6 different dimensions. It included life cycle monitoring, looked at emergent safety or deviant behavior safeguards, what is really ethical autonomy, looked at recursive governance, looked at also regional adaptive governance, and also human oversight. So these were the 6 pillars that we looked at from the perspective of various different corporate verticals, like Dr. Shivraman said, looked at BFSI, looked at healthcare, looked at education, etc. So what we really found is that there is a significant maturity gap. We see that BFSI, in fact, has the highest level of, you could say, compliance, and also maybe 100% human oversight mechanisms inbuilt. Of course, RBI has the free AI framework to be able to deal with transactions in AI applications, and perhaps that could have been the reason. If you talk about education, it was kind of like the biggest sleeping giant in the room, you could say, even though there was significant excitement about AI tutors and whatnot. The level of safeguards against deviant behavior was almost nil in any of the educational applications that we looked at and the people we spoke to. If you looked at the healthcare on the other side, it has the highest amount of variability in terms of some institutions being well-oriented in terms of the AI impact in their own institutions, but also highest risk because of the lack of governance maturity across the healthcare systems due to lack of also escalation protocols and procedures, and also automated safeguards. So all of these were what we found as significantly missing from the healthcare industry. And we looked at public services. It was like kind of a blinded sector when it came to context awareness. So you looked at applications that were available in urban communities, and you just took that and put it in rural communities where it totally didn't make sense, and people couldn't really embrace those technologies. So we found these specific aspects as different verticals from these different industries.
Thank you. Now, thanks. With that background, I will start with the lady first, Gabriela. You oversaw UNESCO's 2021 recommendations on the ethics of AI, right? Given that India's diversity, even our currency prints 15 languages, right? So given India's all possible diversities, right? Which UNESCO principles like justice, inclusivity, or accountability, governance are the most critical for guiding agentic, safe agentic AI, in your opinion, Gabriela?
Well, thank you for me.
Yeah,
yes, you're having me, which is great. Well, thanks so much for the invitation. I'm glad to be here with all friends and new friends.
Yeah.
The fact is that, first, congratulations for that report.
Thank you.
Really feel, and India has shown the way with all of the infrastructure, the TPI, the financial services, the applications of AI, that this should not be only a very sophisticated technological discussion. It has to be grounded on concrete ways in which systems can be improved. And I understand why the education system is lagging behind, too high risk. I know that many countries are not using AI because they don't have the legal basis or the accountability frameworks, and therefore people don't feel that they have the basis to do it. So there would be 2 parts. I feel that the principles that UNESCO developed, but I have to confess that I was also at the OECD when the OECD produced their principles in 2019, and they are the same. It's about transparency, it's about accountability, it's about proportionality. We don't need AI for everything and for every single issue we do. It's about the rule of law. And I would say that for me, all of them are so important, but all of them are only contributors to ensure that the rule of law is preserved. Meaning, we do everything we can to steer the incentives for these technologies to behave. And we're talking about agents. And we're talking about safety and loss of control and catastrophic risk and autonomy that will just get around humans. And I feel that we need to find a way to build not only the most important principle, but as Krishna said, bring it to very concrete ways of doing it. For example, if you want to make sure that the deployments are accountable, one thing is very important that we did also, and with the support of member states, was to eliminate the notion, ban the notion that you can give legal personality to AI developments. And you might say, well, this sounds very crazy, no? But at the end, I spent hours listening to member states with such different views. Japan was fully supportive to give legal personality, thinking about care economy, the elderly, having robots that will be there, and who knows, like corporations also have legal responsibilities. And then you have the other group, European countries, who are more based on human rights, saying no way we can do that, because then you will be delinking the responsibility and the outcomes, and there should always be human determination. And I think this is another very important principle.
Thank you, Kapila. Now, with that, a follow-up question, I will go to Dr. Abdul Rahman, right? A lot of countries from MENA, including especially Saudi, are drafting ethical AI guidelines, and you were leading some of this initiative that Abdul Rahman played a stellar role there, right? So now, like with this, like for example, Riyadh AI Center, right? You were part of it, and you were one of the thought leaders there, right? Well, I mean, should countries like India, Saudi, and all the global South countries should collaborate on establishing a common ground where we have a centralized kind of guidelines, but with regional flavors? And do you think organizations like UNESCO and UN should play a role on this? A follow-up question. What do you think?
Thank you, Shiv. I think to your point, yes, it is timely right to do this right now. MENA region, today morning I had a round table with the Indian counterparts.
Okay.
We are talking about expanding relationship, but not only that, but also the businesses, the trades between different countries, and what that trade with AI will look like, and how these agents will help, or how these agents will come with some challenges. Maybe Gabriela mentioned the legal side of it, but I'll focus on the economical part of it.
Okay.
Now, we want to have more business with different countries. These opportunities will create new businesses, but those all, or the majority of those businesses today is digital. How are we going to do that if the ethical concern is not embedded by design, if it's not localized? And in some cases, it needs to be also sovereign in some places. So while we work together, we need to make sure sovereignty is there. I think today morning, some of our Indian colleagues mentioned that, especially with what happened in the past year or so from major countries, that opened our eyes that sovereignty is very important. And we cannot just deal with it, especially with Agentic now, without thinking of the consequences of not having the agents in your country, and those agents are not having the right understanding. I think also that looking at those agents now and working with different counterparts, auditing and looking at the compliance that will come, either voluntary today. In case of Saudi Arabia, there is no required law, but there is voluntary compliance. Yep. And in maybe other countries as well. At the same time, build that compliance within the products, build it from the ground up, in order to make sure that these products are culturally accepted, and also will provide the right value that for those programs. I think at the end also, preserving languages and preserving culture is an important deal for many of us. Therefore, building those applications and those programs with the cultural preservation, either language or religions and many others, are a critical, important point for so many customers today. Thank you. Thank you.
So that's a very important point. You need to take into account the cultural aspects of the entire thing. That is a great point. Now, Dr. Anskar, like if you look at it, our India AI guidelines are principle-based, right? Quote unquote. Like trustworthy AI and human-centric and all the stuff. Like unlike Europe's more detailed draft regulations. So, from your perspective, India is at risk of too many gray areas. Should high-stakes AI like finance, healthcare, BFSI have stricter mandates? What's your opinion on that?
Thank you. I think it's an important thing to reflect on if we're looking at the upcoming importance of AI systems, be they agentic or otherwise, and their impact on the way in which companies and people and public sector interact with each other to figure out what is the good baseline against which we're going to be operating on these. Now, certain jurisdictions like the EU have a tradition of approaching these kinds of new technologies with an approach of saying, we will set new regulations, we will set sort of a new legal frameworks around this. There are certain reasons for this, one of them being that the EU is trying to coordinate across 27 different jurisdictions, and if the EU doesn't put something in place, then you run the risk of getting 27 different pieces of legislation, which is not going to be beneficial for anybody, really. But just because one culture of jurisdiction has one way of approaching this doesn't mean that that is the best way for everybody else. For India, for many other jurisdictions, you have a different culture of how to approach regulation in a space, and it makes more sense to also approach AI regulation in a way that fits in with the way in which everything else is being done. So it may make more sense to say, instead of trying to put in place a new piece of AI legislation, let us make sure that the existing pieces of safeguards that exist for the society, that they are maintained correctly when dealing with AI. So for instance, just asking existing regulators to pay attention that AI doesn't generate a accountability gap where people will say, well, it wasn't our choice. The AI agent went off and did a thing, and therefore it's not my fault, and maybe we'll try to blame it on the technology providers from whom we imported something, but the technology provider will say, well, we never knew you were going to go to this context, which comes to the sectoral dependency, so we couldn't take accountability for it. We must never allow accountability to suddenly evaporate just because there was an agentic system in the space. But the way in which to approach it needs to fit within the cultural and legal context of a jurisdiction. So it's not the case that you can say, these were the first movers, everybody needs to follow this way, or anything. It's important to look at what works in your context.
Great. So I'm going back to Camilla. Throughout your tenure in UNESCO, you always evangelize basically, inclusivity, AI inclusivity, and security and governance, right? What kind of concrete steps you suggest from India's perspective or Global South perspective to ensure that the systems we are building, agentic system, are safe and secure?
That's a question that has several levels. Because first, as we have heard, of course, we need to make sure that the way we develop the technologies is safe. And the good news is that technologically, that is becoming more feasible. Before, I mean, I have been in all these summits for many years, even before the AI summits arrived on the G20. And we were always listening, we don't understand the models, we don't know how to control them, they come with certain results, and then we don't, I'm hearing that less. It's not that it's gone, because it's true that there are very complex models and sometimes the outcomes are not aligned with what the developer wants to do. But so I feel that we should ensure that we don't discriminate. We are in a context in which there are lots of inequalities. There are lots of communities that are not represented in the data, not only in terms of language, and the work that ICARE is doing is, in that sense, have more representativeness in the development of the tools. But at the end, when you apply those technologies, we need to make sure that we understand the context and we understand which are the groups that are at risk of suffering in their rights, in their opportunities, because of the technology. And I don't think that this is the mindset that we have now. It seems that the technology came from the sky and then we're discussing the technology. No, we have some challenges. India has a lot of challenges as Mexico. The high inequalities, yes. The need to provide with quality education to children, the need to ensure that there is universal health coverage. I mean, all of our countries, what they are aiming at is to improve the well-being of their people. And at the end, independently of the technology or not, that's our objective. So how do we ensure that these technologies are going to be helping us to provide more opportunities for those groups that were usually lagging behind? Of how are they going to be because of the bias algorithms or data that is not representative are going to be just widening this gap. I feel this is the most important thing, and again, it's not going to be a technological discussion, it's going to be a political one, it's going to be a societal discussion, and it's going to be based in recognizing first and foremost what are our challenges, and then how we solve them. One of the issues that is very easy to do is to ensure that women are represented in the development. Yep. No, I'm happy that we have a very balanced panel.
Yeah, very balanced panel.
But usually it's not the case. Yep. The fact is that you have only 20% in the big developments of the AI in the world, only 20% of the workforce are women. And you see the top owners of these technologies are men, nothing wrong with that, but no, not first taken. But at the end, this is one of the issues that we really need to tackle, and that is not so complicated.
Do you see this trend improving? A follow-up question, the inclusivity of women in deep tech is, do you see a trend which is improving?
Not that much. I see more push. I see more women pushing, but no, it's not yet there. I admire India because actually you have a share of women engineerings that is higher than in Belgium or in some other European countries. We need not only to break the mold and the glass ceiling, we need to create the pipeline. And therefore, it's a challenging task, but at least the fact that many leaders are recognizing that this cannot go on without gender equality, I think is a good step.
What about LATAM, like Mexico, your own country?
In LATAM, we don't have AI, no. No, I'm kidding, I'm kidding, of course. No, there are lots of very fantastic women. I have senators, and now I have the first female president, which is a scientific, and you have me. Thank you.
I'm going to Dr. Abdullah Ruman. We have been going through a lot of discussions about AI life cycle accountability, right? In your view, like if something goes wrong with agentic AI system and the life cycle chain, actually, who do you think should be held responsible, either the developers or the regulators or the government or who else, like, right? That's what, are there any regulatory requirements or guidelines or frameworks are in place which helps you to identify this is a life cycle activities and I have to pin the responsibility at this stage on this person? Is there anything are evolving, in your opinion?
Maybe before answering this question, I'll follow up with Gabriela and women empowerment. I believe that Global South have a unique opportunity for women empowerment more than Global North.
Completely agree with you.
Looking at the ratio of women representation in engineering and science in India and in Saudi is very good, and it is improving.
Yes, of course.
Improving organically, even without looking or trying that hard to engage as much.
Yes.
So this is an opportunity rather than it's a challenge. I understand it's a challenge for certain countries, but it's a great opportunity for Global South, and that will bring more Global South to South collaboration.
Collaboration,
I
yes.
think that's becoming more important now, especially on women empowerment. Now, going back to your question about the accountability, I think accountability, will be the most important piece of Agentic. This is the trickiest part. After risk and accountability will be the biggest challenges with Agentic, but it needs to be layered. We can't say just developers are the one responsible, especially if the agent is generative. We can't say also multinational technology organization, they are the one responsible and accountable for X and Y. I think there should be layers, and that layers will include the developers, will include the provider, will include also the deployer, whomever that organization is deploying in either a government agency or whatever, and also the international community where we are setting also standards and programs to help improve that accountability and establish it in different ways. And then different countries will have it somewhat differently. As you mentioned earlier, jurisdictions are thought and maybe systems are different. Therefore, it will be implemented to the context of that country.
No, Dr. Asghar, you have been one of the evangelists and thought leader when it comes to AI audits and evaluation, even your current role for that matter, right? In your opinion, like, what do you think what India is doing right, or the private sector is doing right or not doing right when it comes to this? The front-end system audits and on the agentic AI systems.
Let me start by reflecting on the question about the accountability point. I think it's absolutely true. The accountability, there will be certain accountability that lies with the engineers, but that is not where it will start. It starts with those who've decided that an AI system is going to even be used in this kind of space. That means it starts with the decision makers. If you're in a company, that means it starts at the C-level. There needs to be accountability there that includes taking the responsibility to put in place good governance frameworks, including looking at things like standards that have arisen around this, like the ISO 42001 AI management system standard, which is providing a life cycle perspective on these questions. But then it needs to also be at the deployment side, at whoever is deciding we are actually going to go with this. We can't have the agentic system somehow being the one that does this. I think, and we had a very lively and I think a dynamic conversation on this topic of the assessments and validations of AI systems earlier during this conference. I think we heard some very valuable and strong contributions from our Indian colleagues on that panel, including from Jibu Ilyas from Mozilla Foundation, about the way in which India is looking at this not just from a top-down, but also from the bottom-up kind of perspective of how can you make sure that SMEs, that smaller organizations, if they are looking to use AI to help them scale and help them be able to be a strong competitor in the space, but that they can find ways of practically implementing it against the principles that have been established. Principles are all great and good, but if you don't have a practical way of looking into this, then there's a challenge. And I think that is an area where there's still a lot that needs to be done, but we are seeing practical tools coming out. We've got standards, we've got also IEEE standards around AI ethics. We've also got tools like AI impact assessment frameworks that are coming out, including one that the Council of Europe is looking to launch related to the Convention on AI. So I think it was, for me, what I see, especially in India, and I think also broadly across the Global South, is because there is a dynamic mindset of many voices exploring best ways of approaching it, that we have an organic bottom-up way of finding this is what's actually going to work, and that thing, maybe it looks nice on a piece of paper, but practically speaking, there are gaps here that we need to fill, and I think India can bring these up through this dynamic ecosystem.
That's a very good, important point. Dr. Krishna, you would like to add something on the framework part, what you guys are working?
So basically listening to all of you, I really feel that thinking about what would be an ideal AI, agentic AI framework, what could some pillars be from that perspective is kind of something that we had actually discussed about and researched. And if you really look at the approaches that we can take, one is from the regulatory API perspective. Can you make these systems stop and think or stop and ask type of approaches? That would be one. And the other would be, how can you really have a second layer of, say, watcher agents that could really look at any goal drifts and potential malicious performance of these types of things. So we came up kind of with a three-prong approach to how to really embrace these kind of agentic AI and build a framework around it. And first included looking at providing more of a dynamic compliance oracle, you could say, that could really sync up with the rules and regulations as they're evolving and incorporate that into an engine to be able to share with the world. Second, like I said, is more of a federated watcher agent that could actually, again, monitor and ensure that there is always an alarm when there is a potential drift of any sort or even violations. And third is really what I feel most important, which is really a very compassionate and a constitutional AI perspective. How do you really protect secularism? How do you really provide equity? How do you really give justice when needed, in spite of all the potential testing and frameworks and standards that it has gone through? How do you really ensure that this still really happens? Is kind of the evolvement of kind of the things that we are looking at and want to really propose as potential pathways for everybody to be able to look at as well. Thank you.
That's a very interesting point. So this is a cross-panel question, cross-cutting panel question. I thought we have critical sectors like BFSI, healthcare, defense, retail, and education and stuff like that. When it comes to agentic AI, safe agentic AI systems, what do you think should be regulated? Which sector should be regulated first? I know that. Immediately everybody would jump into BFSI, which is a very highly regulated industry. But I would like to draw your brain. Like, which should be, in your opinion, which sector should be regulated first?
I don't think that's the way the policy cycle operates.
Okay.
Because at the end you have ministers in charge of sectors. And they will tell you, no way, Jose. It's my sector first.
Okay.
No, I think that what we need to look at, and I'm learning a lot from this panel, is how to ensure that the learnings from one sector can be also informing what happens in other sectors.
Yeah.
And for me, the most important element here is to have it outcome-based. Okay. I was talking to Krishna in the way coming here to education. Just think about education. You can say, I want agents to help me grade the students and allow me to get rid of all the administrative tasks. Okay. It's the most complicated setting to deploy these things. Not because of the technologies, but because of the organizational changes that need to be made in these systems. And I compare education with health. Health is a sector that is very absorptive of research, of progress knowledge all the time. Doctors need to be upgrading themselves all the time. They have by design, because they're dealing with human health, safety procedures. And many times when we were working on neurotechnology, we were thinking the neurotechnology tools that are now in the markets would need to follow the neurotechnology tools that are in the health system because they are very well codified. So it depends on which sector, but at the end, it would need to be outcome-based. And what we have seen in the education field, for example, is that everybody wants the technology, and the places or the countries that have introduced the tablets and all the programs and are not the ones that are improving the student outcomes, because they did not take a look at the cultural content. They did not take a look at how to change the pedagogy. They did not train teachers, and they didn't put the whole system behind to support the deployment and the knowledge of what the technology can contribute in the specific sector. So I feel it's more understanding how these things work and what kind of technology will help them do what. Agents replacing teachers? I hope not.
Yep.
I absolutely agree that ultimately we are interested in the outcomes, and so that is what we judge the system by. But it is important that the thought process around how do we make sure that the outcomes are going to be compliant with good behavior, that doesn't start at the end of the process, but that is something that starts at the very beginning of the process when we are defining what are the requirements that we want for this agentic system. At that point already, it is important to make sure that the conversation about what do appropriate societal, legal compliant, ethical outcomes, what do those look like, and how do we make sure that they are achieved throughout the life cycle of the system?
I think before coming to this session, I played with my agents. And I actually threw this question for them to discuss. What you will notice that over-reliance is a big issue. And a human with over-reliance in so many areas create new problems.
Yes.
And look at previous technology, not only AI. Therefore, we will go through a whole list of, we want this to improve our efficiency, solve some problems, to have new problems. And then we need to solve them in another way, maybe not with that technology, or maybe to your point, Professor, before, with an agent that follows the other agents. And they're all valid, but not in every case. And as Gabriela mentioned, I think healthcare and education will be critical areas. And what's more critical is the outcome moving forward, and how are we going to measure those outcomes. Then is this technology is beneficial, or we will ban it or not use it because it is actually not as beneficial. So all these questions will come to surface when we adopt more these agent and maybe AI overall. Then we are not getting the benefit that we thought it will be. So we'll think about a different technology that will help us to solve it.
So I too agree with the thought that perhaps we should not be thinking sectoral only. And maybe the way to unify, you could say the cross-sectoral requirements would be to look at a hybrid approach. What could be the minimum common requirements that should be common across all sectors, while there could be some specific sectoral requirements that could be mandated depending on healthcare, which is kind of the highest risk, you could say, sector compared to, followed by education. So in that common requirements, can we at least define what are, the risks, what are, some of the definitions that we are going to be able to use so that they are all commonly judged and commonly assessed? That would be the first suggestion, followed by what are some specific sectoral requirements like clinical safety versus, age-related requirements when it comes to education, and what kids can use and should not use, and what types of, like I mentioned, emergent behavior controls that we can really bring into these applications. So I think a hybrid approach could actually be a more of a unifying way to be able to look at perhaps sectoral, you could say, regulations.
Okay, suppose if India as a country, if we have to balance our ambition to be, AI superpower, or at least a forerunner of AI technologies when it comes to, vis-a-vis playing it safe in some sectors, do you think we need to pass this in some sectors and take the lessons and then move forward to other critical sectors. This is that approach. What do you think about this approach?
Well, I think that's exactly what you have done with the DPI. So
Okay.
you really, and I think that was very smart because the financial sector is really serving everybody.
Yep.
And it's also helping to educate and make individuals bankable and get financial inclusion. And so I feel that was a very strategic thinking. And in that sense, I see where you're going, some of the things that India has done are really like benchmarks.
Yes.
I was privy to a conversation a decade ago
Yep.
on the digital registry.
Yep.
And we thought it's crazy to think that you can do 100 million every month.
Yeah,
I said, no way, that's just crazy. Well, it's done.
yeah.
And therefore, 10 years ago, now we're talking about the infrastructure, connectivity, the digital tools, and you have them. Then you go to services, and then you go, and so you're building it up. And you are also building the human capital, which is super important because the skills are lagging and are lacking, not only in emerging economies, but also in advanced economies. And even you see how the big tech is just trying to capture the talent everywhere. So I feel you're doing it in the right way. I take advantage to make an announcement because there is a book that I contributed of Springer, where these questions was posed. No, what would it take? And I put 4 I's, which was incentives for more investments in safe, secure, and good AI, infrastructure,
Yep.
investments, massive investments, not the trillions that the big tech is earning, that's their own choice, but the governments, the businesses, the people need to invest in themselves to use these technologies. And the last one is incentives, infrastructure, institutions. We need institutions to frame the thing.
You spoke about DPI. I have my friend Dr. Avik, who played a big role in that. I thought Avik can answer that. Right. Over to you, Dr. Durgapal.
I believe a lot of countries have done very interesting things that we can all learn from. And having a forum like this today and other forums on AI and especially on regulation and on adoption will help all of us learn from what happened in one country and what can be learned from the other countries. And that's one of the reasons why most of us we are here and why we want to have this exchange in order to learn from the good and bad and what happened in each of the countries. And I think that will help us all transform and get better as we go.
Sorry to chip in, but I would love to ask Saudi Arabia how they have made to increase female participation, which was amazing.
Yeah.
I think, to the point earlier, Global South and especially Middle East, North African countries, women are seriously interested in STEM. And that's not the cultural issues that we face elsewhere, where STEM is not for girls. Actually, in my previous team at the International Center for AI, the team is about 45% women, organically.
Yep.
We are just hiring, and women are getting into those programs faster than men. I think the ratio somehow is very close to each other, but men has other options also to look at, while women like these type of jobs. Being in
That's
office,
interesting point.
it is interesting. It is interesting for them, but don't quote me on this. They're in many cases better than some of the guys. Therefore, therefore they are getting higher results, higher scores, high achievement. And in Saudi, we see them everywhere. We're very proud of so many women are across the board in Saudi, in AI, and also in other STEM areas. And you can see just some of those international competition and how they are the majority of the teams are ladies in there.
Right.
So congratulations to them, and happy to be in that situation.
Yeah, I can tell you, like, I've been going to Riyadh and Jeddah, like, for the last 3-4 years, attending conferences. The amount of women speakers who are getting into the stage and talking about STEM areas is phenomenally increasing. That's very simple. Last word. You are the last word.
So I think events like this this week, it's really great that the conference has come to India because, as you already said, we all need to be learning from each other. And as all of the different jurisdictions and companies have been on this journey to try to find out not just what are cool proof of concepts that you play with within AI, but rather what are the challenges that come when you try to integrate them into actual service provisions that people need to be able to rely on. And we've seen huge challenges in public sector deployment of AI as well in many different jurisdictions. It is vital that there is a good exchange of knowledge, especially on things like safety and trust and safeguards, and what are red lines that these systems should really never be deployed for, because if they fail, it has a broad systemic impact. And what are we actually learning through these different experiences, including the things that didn't work, or whereas like you can't move this fast, you need to move at a certain speed because institutional knowledge needs to build up, frameworks need to be in place. So this conversation is very necessary, and frank exchange of information.
With that, I also had a small announcement. So with the support from India AI Mission and the Ministry of IT, as well as the Department of Telecom, Amrita was also had an opportunity to actually build a system to be able to track actually the various biases, truthfulness, etc. of LLMs for India-specific applications. So with that, maybe I just wanted to play a short video for those of you in the crowd that would like to test their applications with this specific outcome of the Government of India's effort. Please do come meet with us and talk to us as well.
I make one last announcement also, like on Friday, Amrita University, we worked on a research report on AI sovereignty for India and Global South. With NASCOM as a research partner, we are releasing this research report at 3 o'clock at Bharat Mandapam, not here. So we would like all the panelists to be here to please grace the occasion and bless the report. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Also, I think one of our speakers, Dr. Ganesh,